Cam, I think the best place to start is probably for us to give you a little introduction. If you could tell us a bit about what your role at Barker entails and about your background previously.
Yes, mate. I've just started here at Barker as head of sport, and that's a pre-K to Year 12 role across both boys and girls. Prior to this role, I was down at Pymble Ladies College as the Director of Sport and Activities, and there I was looking after pretty much everything outside of the classroom in the co-curricular world. So I've been at Barker for almost 6 months now. Time flies, and you're doing a good job nodding your hair there, Sam. I've been at Barker for almost 6 months, and it's a really good challenge.
So how are you finding Barker so far?
It's not that much different to any other independent school. Obviously, it's co-ed, so there are different associations to work through. Most of the girls' sports through ISA, boys' sports through CAS, and junior schools through IPSHA. But apart from that, there are no major differences. The culture here is excellent. Staff are fantastic. And obviously the grounds in this new centre, Rosewood, is excellent.
That's awesome. I think the biggest shift for me when I heard that you got this role would have been working with boys sport now, especially as part of CAS. I was a Knox boy, you're a Knox boy, facing the old rivals in the other CAS schools and also playing across GPS as well. That must be a bit of a shift, I would imagine, from Pymble.
Well, yes and no. Obviously, boys' sports, there are different sports that are offered, but as far as the management and the structure and the processes and the guidelines and everything else we do in this type of role, it's all fairly similar, whether it's boys, girls, junior school or not. Same processes, same ways we want to run sport, the same foundations and principles are in play to basically allow each student the best opportunity as they can possibly get to do as well as they can get.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. So Cam, how long have you been using Clipboard now?
I don't know, mate. You tell me. I've been involved with Clipboard for I don't know, 3. When did you start off, Sam? When did you start at Knox?
It's about, God, probably 4 years. 4 years ago now, we officially started. Pymble was definitely one of the early players. So Pymble, I think you were the 3rd or 4th school. But I remember you saying that you were looking for a solution similar, especially for timesheeting, for years. I remember you saying you were looking for something for 10 years before, these two Knox boys came along.
Yeah, well, it would have been probably 4 years ago. I first spoke to Marty Haywood at Knox, and we were comparing notes about different types of software we were using. And I did say to him at that point that I'd been searching for a very long time for software that would enable us to mark the roll, to have medical data imported against the student's name, and also electronic timesheets. That they were my one big bugbear. And Marty said, I know of a piece of software that may be able to help you. And so I first became involved probably 3 years ago.
So what were the biggest problems that you experienced back then when you were looking for a solution for so long?
Duty of care was the biggest issue. Not being able to mark the rolls accurately, relying on anything from paper rolls to Excel sheets to coaches, sharing forms, etc. We did not have accurate information coming back to us, and we really didn't have a good understanding of who was turning up to training and who was not turning up to training. That was the primary frustration. The other frustration was not knowing whether the medical information we were giving the coaches was actually up to date. So it may have been medical information from the last time a parent had updated, or the last time we received the information from the healthcare centre and printed it out. Could have been 12 months old. Whereas now with Clipboard, we grab the information from the school's database and it's as live as it can be. So we're, that was the second part. The third part was electronic timesheets and just being able to manage that process.
So Cam, back when you were doing paper and sort of manual systems at Pymble, and I guess it's similar to the way things were set up at Barker before you came along as well, what were the problems with those systems?
Oh, well, paper system obviously is not very accurate. You're relying on staff filling it in, for one, which is quite typical for many casual employees. They're coming straight from uni, they're coming from other jobs, they've got to leave and get home or whatever they may be doing, and you may or may not receive that piece of paper back. It could be lost in the back of their car or left beside a basketball court or whatever it may be. And if that piece of paper had information on it, which was meant to be private information, then that's a real issue. And I remember at Pymble at one point picking up a coach's handbook which had the role in the back of it. And there were some things scribbled down which were private to the student and the coach. And that really concerned me.
Wow. So it's, yeah, I guess as well, lack of privacy, lack of security.
Yeah.
It's ironic that paper's a lot less secure than any digital system because it can go anywhere.
Yeah.
Cam, how would you say that Clipboard has solved these problems that you used to experience?
Well, Clipboard solved the problems, all three of the major issues I was facing at Pymble and again at Barker. It solved them completely. Take the first issue, duty of care, role marking. For us, it's a one-stop shop. It's very easy for the coach to use. We run an induction for each of our casual employees and our permanent staff here on how to use Clipboard, how to access it, and that takes probably 15 minutes all up, and they have a very good understanding of how to use it. They literally click a button and their team's there. They mark the role. The medical information comes straight out of our Engage student database, and which is live. Coaches have access to that. At the same time, we roster our coaches onto different sessions. That information then moves electronically to the manager to be approved and then to payroll to be paid without a paper form inside. So it solves all of our issues.
And how much time would you say that it saved you personally?
Well, me personally, it's probably saved a bit of stress more than time. I had huge concerns when we had paper rolls. I had huge concerns when the medical information we were giving the coaches was not up to date. And there are also concerns over timesheets and the accuracy around those timesheets. And again, it's a piece of paper that can be lost. And at Pymble, when you had over 400 casual employees, you could easily lose one or two bits of paper. And just the number of inaccuracies in it was almost, there would have been probably 500 or 600 pieces of paper every fortnight that came through for signing. And yeah, the inaccuracies would have been huge. But as far as the admin team, we worked out that we probably saved somewhere between 2 and 3 days in hours-wise in a pay sheet run for a staff member. It's like taking it from a 1.0 staff member to a 0.5 staff member. We saved a lot of time running through and coding each of those timesheets.
Wow. So you saved 1.3 to 1.5 to 3 hours per pay cycle just with sports stuff. Did that include the finance stuff?
We saved probably 15 hours in the sport department per pay cycle.
Wow, 15 hours.
Yeah, which is basically a couple of days' work, because as far as budgeting goes, you actually have to run through every single pay sheet and code it. So it might be senior school basketball. So that has a different code to junior school football, for example. So every single form had to be coded and coded accurately, had to be signed by managers, and then they had to be signed by myself. So yes, it took a lot of time.
And you said it likely reduced inaccuracies as well. Do you think that Clipboard saved Pymble money?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So instead of relying on the casual employee to tell us how many hours they've worked each day, knowing that we would likely not be able to check it because there are so many timesheets and casual employees, instead, we're actually rostering the casuals and letting them know and notifying them prior to the end of a pay cycle how many hours they've worked, which they can then question, and they can come back and say, well, actually, I did work an extra half hour there because little Johnny didn't get picked up after school and I had to wait, and that's fine, we can approve that. But we have ownership of the rostering instead of handing it to the casual employee. And you know, the accuracy is there with that. And I'm quite comfortable approving the timesheets now, whereas I wasn't comfortable approving the timesheets, although I had to, because I knew that they just weren't accurate.
Is there any ballpark figure that you think the digital timesheeting through Clipboard might have saved Pymble when you were there?
It would have been north of 50,000 a year.
So Cam, taking into account all the problems that we talked about before that you used to experience, would you recommend Clipboard to similar schools that are facing similar problems?
Absolutely. It's a no-brainer. It's a very simple system to use. It covers our junior care issues that we did have really well. And as far as electronic timesheets goes, it's very simple. And Sam and Ed work with the school's IT people as well as the payroll people to build an interface between our programs and Clipboard and the pay programs to make sure it's a seamless process. So the chances are this has already been done in a school like yours, and the transition would be seamless.
So Cam, obviously COVID has really affected a lot of schools in the delivery of their sports and activities. As Barker starts to get back to sport, what's changed for Barker's sports program?
Well, obviously there was a big period of time where we had no sport. We ran sport online, a lot of videos, but there's only so many online sessions a student can be motivated for. So it's good to now be back on the paddock. We're running our full winter program at the moment, albeit with social distancing rules in place, which is difficult, but achievable. And it's just so good to see the boys and girls out there on the fields doing their thing, running around, and they seem to be really enjoying it.
And so, Cam, as Barker gets back to sport and you have to practice that social distancing and follow all the other guidelines, which, to be honest, I find really quite complex, to be honest. What role does Clipboard play in helping Barker get safely back to sport?
Well, Clipboard makes the transition back to sport really easy. what we were doing is we were setting up smaller groups. And so initially with our first week back, we concentrated on the teams that we knew would probably be back to competition first. And so we would have to set up smaller groups. And all we did is put those groups into Clipboard and combine them into a class, allocated a teacher, and we were off and running. So it just made the logistical side of it, the duty care side of it, really easy because we knew what we had to do, and it was very easy to do it. And then as we brought more and more students back to training, we could then broaden the groups we had and allocate a couple of staff to them. So it just made the transition from smaller groups to larger groups easy, and I was quite comfortable, worrying about navigating our way through all the New South Wales health guidelines. I was quite comfortable knowing that our duty of care was actually being taken care of through software like Clipboard.
So Cam, in terms of attendance tracking, obviously that's a hot topic right now, making sure that you know where students are at all times and have a accurate record of that. God forbid if a student was to test positive. What role does Clipboard's attendance tracking play into that?
Oh, it's well, first of all, we have our duty of care to know where students are at all times, just for our normal day-to-day processes. But if you overlay COVID-19 on top of that, it would give us really quick and accurate information about where the student has been, who they've been with, almost like the government's tracking app. And if, knock on wood, if there was a student to test positive here, I would almost certainly get a phone call from the top of the school to say, what team is the student in? When do they train? Who do they train with? And I'd be able to get that information together in about 2 minutes through Clipboard. So it'd be very handy.
And what would the process be like right now, trying to get that information if you didn't have Clipboard in place?
Oh, it'd depend how it was all set up, but I would imagine there'd be somewhere in a folder somewhere would be a facilities timetable. You'd then have to search for the student to figure out what team they were in, compare that against a facility timetable, work out who else was in the team, and get a lot of information together. So that would take some time, and again, it probably wouldn't be accurate. Whereas in Clipboard, if as we're moving from smaller groups to larger group training, we're actually sliding the students across. So we knew exactly who was in each group. Whereas paper, it just, in my experience, doesn't get updated as quickly.
Wow. Cam, so before going with Clipboard at Pymble was using CHQ for a few things, including attendance tracking. What made you switch across to Clipboard?
It was just difficult, CHQ, as far as attendance tracking goes. We went to CHQ for co-curricular registrations, and although it had some issues of its own, it did cater for the complex nature of co-curricular registrations at Pymble, and part of that was the attendance tracking, but it wasn't as accurate as I needed it to be, and it wasn't as reliable as I needed it to be. So moving across to Clipboard for the attendance tracking basically tick the box for us as far as reliability and accuracy goes.
Cam, what's Sparker's and your personal experience been working with the team at Clipboard?
It's been great. I was quite lucky because I've worked with Ed and Sam and the team at Pymble. So I'd been involved with them and Clipboard for quite some time. When I was leaving Pymble, I actually went to a conference where Ed and Sam were present and told them I was leaving to go to Barker, and they said, they'd actually been in talks at Barker a little bit, which I was thrilled about. So it was very easy for me to come into Barker when I started, meet with IT, who are really supportive of Clipboard and to get things rolling. I'm thrilled that we have it here.
Cam, why did Barker sign up to Clipboard?
I believe originally Barker signed up for Clipboard as far as, and I wasn't here at the time, but I think they were looking at electronic timesheets. And what we've done so far from that is moving into the role marking, medical information, the electronic timesheets, and it's also serving as our place of truth as far as what the students are doing with their registration. So we're feeding the data from Clipboard into MyBarker, which basically is the parents' portal and the students' portal as to what their students are doing. So Clipboard is the source of truth for all sport at Barker.
Pam, do you feel like you have more time to spend with students and improve student outcomes in sport because of this system saving you and the team time?
Yeah, whenever you save time, that obviously leaves more time to do something else. There are a few other things we're currently working on, which we wouldn't be working on if we weren't using Clipboard. As I said a little bit earlier, Clipboard gives me I guess a sense of protection as far as the students are concerned, without duty of care for the students, medical information, duty of care as far as attendance tracking goes. So we can almost park that to the side, put our processes in place to make sure the data is accurate, and then concentrate on what we need to do next. So for some of us, like me, it's about looking at structure and process. For others, it basically means extra face-to-face time with the students, which is excellent.
So it really sounds like students are better off because of this, because that's really the goal for us and the reason why we exist. At the end of the day, we've personally gone through and experienced how great sports and activities were for us growing up, how many life lessons they taught us, and have realized that the more time that people like yourself and your team spend on the admin work, the less time you have to spend actually improving student outcomes and improving the lives of these kids and their futures. So that's really great to see.
Yeah.
So Cam, I guess one of the last questions, what surprised you most or made you happiest after signing up to Clipboard?
Clipboard allows me to put a simple process in place for the administration team and the coaches of each team, and they can easily mark roles, access medical information, put themselves up for extra training sessions, press a button to say, yes, please pay me, whatever it may be. And it's very simple to use. And over the next 12 months, we're going to see a huge increase in accident report form numbers. And that's not because hopefully we have more accidents, but it's because the coaches have found a simple way of reporting these accidents. And that gives me a lot of comfort. And from that, we can have a look at the data, have a look at the trends, and hopefully in time reduce injuries.
Wow, that's amazing to hear. It's really great to hear that we've given you peace of mind. And also it's really nice to hear that some of the work that we're doing with Barker is helping to actually improve student outcomes and allow your team to focus on more projects. I know that I've been talking to David O'Keefe about some of the research he's doing around athlete management and implementing an elite athlete program. And it's great to see that the team has time to do those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, Cam, thank you so much for your time. We love having Barker and also Pymble as part of the Clipboard community. Love having you as an advocate, and thank you so much for your time, and I'll speak to you soon.
All right, Sam. Take care.